Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Choralist Choir Hour with me, Sibusiso Njeza. Normally, these sessions happen on Thursdays at 7 o'clock and not on Friday. But due to the memorial service that was held yesterday during the same time as the Choralist Choir Hour, I had to postpone to today instead of yesterday. And that memorial service was for the late composer, Mr. Pelelani Mnomia, who passed on earlier this week. Condolences are being poured to the family. There's a page on Facebook where people can send their condolences and tributes for this maestro and to comfort the family as well. So that is why we couldn't have the show yesterday, and I thought, let me have it today. In the words of Uqinisela Sibisi in the song Yashingoma, he says, Yathi Swaziland, Nathi siyangena la. And that's what they did even today. I am hosting Swaziland, a choir from Swaziland, which is now the Kingdom of Eswatini now, no longer Swaziland, but we used to know them as Swaziland. And that is His Majesty Correctional Services choir from the Kingdom of Eswatini. Let me welcome the conductor, Mr. Melisizwe Zwane. Mangethe, kunjani?
Siyaphila baba, njani nina?
I'm very well. Yesterday, some of your friends and followers requested that I allow you to speak in Swati. So I think in order for us not to be lost, I must give you the opportunity now so that when you are greeting the Choralist viewers out there and introducing yourself, you do that in Swati.
Okay, no, siyabonga kakhulu baba Njeza kusamukela ehlelweni lanamuhla lokhuluma ngoMelisizwe Sibusiso Zwane Eswatini, conductor we His Majesty's Correctional Services choir. Ichoir yethu ibased kuMathapha esifundeni sakaManzini. Siyajabula kuba kanye nani namuhla. Ngokulanga ngicabanga ukuthi libhlungu kakhulu after kushona kwakhe yena babe SPP Mnomia. Lo dlalela ichaza lelikhulu ngetimpilweni tethu sonke sikuyo yona ichoral music. Kepha noma kunjalo siyathemba ukuthi ifamily yakhe itawuthola kuthuteka, nabo bonke labe bamlandzela, nabo bonke labe bamthandza batawuba kanye nawo umndeni kiso lesikhathi sebuhlungu. Siyabonga kakhulu.
Thank you so much. I knew that if you speak Swati right at the beginning, at least we will be able to follow.
Yes.
That's what you were saying. On that same note, I agree with you. We really lost a great musician in Maestro Mnomia, because this was one composer who actually worked across different genres. You know, in jazz, he was there. In gospel, he was there. In choral, he was there, and he composed some operas as well. And he was not shy to incorporate some Zulu idioms into the music of the music that he composed. So, what are some of your memories of him? Did you perform any of his music, and what do you think of that music that you performed?
Yeah, I think before we go anywhere, I think it is very, very much important that we need to highlight how much of an impact he played in our lives, not just as people who were conductors or singers, but Mnomia had a different touch to him. He would always be someone who would go over and above just the music itself, someone who would be motivational, someone who would actually speak about spiritual things, about religious things, and he would be very, very much encouraging. So I think in that regard, we have lost someone who was more than just the musical all-rounder, as you put it. I had the pleasure of doing some of his music, I think, in 2016 in a local competition, I think Chilo Chilo. It was after Melting Pot. So Beganu Tambo was prescribed there and performed that song as Correctional Services in Swaziland. I think we got Sigelela Msibi. Sam was the adjudicator on the day. We got 93 there. We also performed Siyabonga from Izizilate, I think, in the NCF competitions 2018. So I also had the pleasure of performing one of his legendary songs, Yekela Matwasa. I performed that one as a piece last year in the Standard Bank competition. And I found that there was a hunger for his old compositions, and his compositions were quite timeless. So after we performed Yekela Matwasa, we had so many requests. Why aren't we bringing in Amadlelo Al-Hlaza? So that was in the pipeline after the performance of Yekela Matwasa. So he's someone who was, his music is timeless, and I'm sure it will even outlive us and will be performed by future.
I agree with you. It is going to outlive us, because some of his pieces were ahead of his time. I mean, if you listen to the piece that he composed in 2017, Kabingoma, it's a very unusual piece. It's a very unusual piece. It's somewhere we have not arrived at, that particular piece. But Siyabonga is by far my favorite one. I really love that piece. And funny enough, I have not performed it. It's still on the shelf. Maybe one day I will actually perform it. Mangete, let's get to the conversation about HM Correctional Services Choir. In South Africa, there are competitions and festivals for correctional services. You'll find festivals and competitions for South African Police Service, even the SANDF, the National Defence Force. There are competitions for Amajoni, and there are competitions at some point for South African Post Office. And I think at some point we had a competition for the Department of Health as well. So besides the local choirs and university and school choirs, church choirs as well. So choral music is getting into all these other departments in South Africa. And now we have HM Correctional Services from Eswatini. Is it a culture like it is here to have correctional services choirs in Eswatini, or it's only HM Correctional Services that we have?
Yeah, well, the advantage of a country like South Africa is that it's the size of the country itself. South Africa is huge. You know, you have 9 provinces, you have districts, you have all of these things. So it is possible to have such competitions, as you rightly stated. But over in Swaziland, we have the HM Correctional Services Choir, which is the only choir that represents all the various branches of correctional services. I think we have 13, if I'm not mistaken. So what you will find, we have choristers based in Matapa, which is the center of the choir. We have choristers that are Abane Correctional Facility. They also travel for practices to Matapa in Mazin. So that is where the choir is centered around. It is not possible to have various stations having choirs themselves because of how small the country is, the department is. So I think when the choir was formed, it was formed not necessarily for competition purposes. It was a choir that was formed in 1993 and formed for cultural events, for performances internally. But the choir has evolved over time, and it started penetrating, into the choral sphere and doing competitions, doing festivals. And that is how we got to be performing in the competition space, the choral music competition space.
Oh, that's lovely. That's lovely.
Yeah.
Further into the correctional services in particular, now in South Africa, I just want to see where the differences are. You've got choirs that are composed of members of the staff of correctional services, and you also have choirs of the inmates, and there are festivals and competitions for inmates only and not the employees. So when it comes to your choir, is it a mixture or is it only employees or inmates?
Is made up predominantly of officers. And
Okay.
then there is a mixture of officers and people, the civilian populace. We have students, you have teachers, you have nurses. So that is how the choir is constituted of. So we have 90 choristers. So more than half of those are officers, and then the remainder are students, and the like. We do not have offenders. They probably they have their own activities internally, but the choir itself, it's mainly for the officers.
Okay, yeah. Also have choirs in South Africa where it's only the officers and no offenders are part of. In fact, I don't even know if there's a choir that mixes both. I think if you
Yeah,
have the inmates, it's inmates. If it's the officers, it's
true.
officers. Yeah.
Yeah,
So tell me, in terms of support, this is important because choirs from Eswatini, we see a lot of them in South Africa, from the Manzini choir to many others now that have joined after Manzini choir. Because I think Manzini was the first one conducted by Ubaba Msibi to come and perform in South Africa for so many years in the National Choir Festival. So in terms of support from the community and government, maybe the Department of Arts and Culture, that just in general, not necessarily the correctional services, how is the
yeah,
support in
yeah. I think we have the one thing I have noticed over time is that the same challenges you have in South Africa are the same challenges we have in this country. In as far as saying you do have support, but is it sufficient? By me saying that we for internally when it comes to correctional services, that's the most supportive place we have. We are supported, I wouldn't lie, from the commissioner general to the various stations. Even when we have our concerts, we have our dinners, fundraising dinners, the commissioner general is always there, the leaders of the department, they're always there. But it goes over and above that, because you need to understand that the core business of correctional services is corrections. So
Yeah.
choral music is an activity. So you are not going to have a situation where you are channeling all the resources of correctional services into an activity. So that is where we need the support of government through the Council of Arts and Culture. They do try, but the funding is very it's very little, in all honesty. And the most positive part is that we continue to having engagements with them through the association. I'm also the secretary of the local choral music association, so I am privy to discussions and negotiations that are going on with the culture council, and moving forward. We the past 2 weeks, I think it's the past 2 weeks, we were invited to make submissions in the new arts and culture bill that is being drafted now. We are going to be seeing more changes moving forward. I am positive.
That's really great. Like you just said, choral music contributes in terms of nation building, in terms of
Yes.
community building from the grassroots, because it brings together, it can bring different cultures. It goes across cultures, it goes across ages, it goes
Yeah.
across religions. people who believe in different things can actually come and sing together in a choir. So
Yes.
so that's part of the contribution that choral music does. And of course, because correctional services, the core business is rehabilitation of inmates. You are correct there. So how do you then, as a choir, perhaps someone can actually learn from that, how do you then mitigate that factor that the correctional services cannot fund the choir fully, but the choir has got to function? How do you then sustain yourselves as a choir?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think in the year 2014, the previous Commissioner General actually put in place what he called cost-saving exercises or cost-saving measures. So you would have a situation where all of these sporting activities need to come on board and actually try and make use of whatever following they have to generate income. So from then on, what we have been engaged in, which actually climaxed last year, we have been hosting events where we have concerts, we have fundraising. Sometimes we set up stalls to sell fruits, vegetables. A long way when it comes to actually mitigating the successful is hosting events because the choir has been growing in following too. So last year, what we did, we it was seen as a risk at the time. We requested the department to set up a marquee for us, and we had a gala dinner, and we had people from all over the country flowing in, and we were able to raise funds that were able to cater for the next competition. So what we try to do is that for a competition, we need to have events this year to cater for the following year as much as possible. We're trying to raise those funds. Secondly, the choristers themselves, they do contribute a lot because at the beginning of the year, they pay, and all of them, you pay your subscriptions, you pay your joining fees. Now, someone said they were quite steep, but if you want to be competitive, the costs are quite high in their own. So we have choristers paying, I think it is 200 Malangen or 200 rands in South African terms. So you have 90 choristers paying that amount at the beginning of the year. So it is money that you are able to start on without depending much on external sources of income. The choir comes together, puts everything together into one pot, and we are able to function. So the biggest thing that we have done, you do not budget on money that is not there. I always see choirs, people putting in money and saying, we are going to pay for this after we win the competition. What happens when you do not win the competition? So then that money is a plus. Money that comes through competitions is a plus. You cannot budget for that money. You budget for money that is there in the account. So that is how we try to raise funds to mitigate all these costs.
You know what you are raising is partly what Professor Twani last week raised, which means this is something that we need to really consider as choirs. Professor Twani raised the need for choirs to invest in themselves.
Yes.
And to take into account what you have in terms of your assets. Combining uniforms, some choirs even have keyboards and melodic and other things that you are using as a choir. But she emphasized the fact that we need to begin to invest. Because I mean, quite frankly, we would be lying if we say people don't have money right around here. I mean, our choristers go to Abu Shisanyama, they go to any other place where they spend money. So if one is taking whatever they're doing seriously and they see value in it, they need to invest. And that is a challenge for us conductors and our choir management. So thank you for raising that. And another point that you are raising, which I want to emphasize for our viewers who might be running choirs, is the question of budgeting.
Yeah.
But out of what you have and not
True.
what out of you are anticipating, because
True.
you might not have that money.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is why people in the end don't pay soloists, others will
Yeah.
not pay for transport, others will not pay caterers, you see. So I hope people at home are actually taking points there. So Mangede, before we move to talking about this year, let's
Yeah.
listen to one piece, and I want to give you some time to drink water, then we'll come
Okay.
back.
All right. Thanks, Papa.
In Xhosa le hymn Mangethe ithi Nkosi umoya uyavuza, and in Swati?
Yeah. Nkosi, it is in Zulu. We sing it in Zulu. Nkosi ubhekisa iphepho.
Okay. I really love it.
Yeah.
I really love it. Usis Mandisa there is emphasizing on the point that paying, Mr. Kala saying, I like the fact that you say choir budget on what they have and what they will get. And Usis Mandisa is emphasizing on the issue of membership fees as it shows commitment to the choir, because whatever you paid for, you place value on it. Now, Mangethe, 2020, definitely you had plans. In fact, you apologized for your choir management, because I had thought I am going to host you and the choir management. Can you please just briefly tell our viewers why we do not have the choir manager, so that they don't think you are the goalkeeper, striker, defender, and referee in your choir?
Yeah, I think we do need to sincerely apologize for that one. The one thing you need to understand about the structure of the choir is we have, I am the conductor with the technical team. We have two assistants. There is the management committee, which is at the choir level. And then there's the executive committee that actually incorporates, the leaders of the department and everything. So when this show actually comes in, this week was supposed to be the week of Umhlanga and all of those things. So some of them are actually detailed over there with some of those other duties. So they did try, but because of those issues, we are not able to have them with us today.
Okay. So Mr. Zwane is not the executive, the conductor, everything in the choir. No, he is the choir director as an artistic director, and he has choir management and the choir executive committee, as he just explained. So, Mr. Zwane, 2020, what plans did you have for 2020?
You will remember that when the lockdown was announced, I think it was 16th of March, 2020, we had a competition, a Standard Bank competition that was happening in 2 weeks from that date. So we had to cancel that competition with preparations well advanced, But we were also in the process of hosting one of the biggest choirs in South Africa. I cannot mention them now. Probably we will discuss that on Facebook and make announcements. But we were just about to announce hosting this choir because, as I told you, we had a gala dinner last year. It was a success. So we wanted to make it even bigger this year by hosting a South African choir. So we also had to cancel that too. We had other ideas that we were putting in place through the choir's marketing team. Things like your family day, things like we were looking forward to hosting, derby days when soccer is being played and having people there to actually come in and watch, where we would be able to sell the choir merchandise, and make some money. So a lot of these things were actually affected. But I am hopeful that as time goes on, we will be able to resume with this probably earliest next year, because it does look positive in as much as it is gloomy now, but we are positive that things will go back to normal.
Can you talk more about those small things, like when there's football and when what actually happens during those events? Because this is interesting to me, when you're hosting an event that has nothing to do with choir singing and choir competitions or choir festivals, as a fundraiser.
Yeah. So what happens in correctional services, there is the management committee. Now, in the management committee, to make sure that we do not have an overlapping of roles and responsibilities, we have subcommittees that each one in the management committees heads up. For instance, there's the uniform committee, there's the marketing committee, there's the technical committee, there is the welfare committee that actually looks after the choir when it's competition time. So we had the marketing committee, which I am also roped in on an advisory basis, since you do have some musical events that you will have coinciding with marketing. So last year we had started discussing issues around how do we take the choir more to the people while it's also generating income. So the ideas were there, they were flowing in. We discussed about having, a day where we would have a awash and have your shisanyama there. We would have a day where you have this weekend, for instance, you have the climax of the South African PSL, you have Chiefs, you have Sundowns playing. So why not set up big screens there and have people come and watch? And at the same time, we are going to be selling, we're going to be selling food, we're going to be selling fruits, we're going to be selling drinks and everything. Try and make sure that we make money. So we were in that process. The marketing team was doing a great job in actually putting those through.
Mr. Zwane, your choir. It's interesting exactly what you say. I really love it. Some of those things we have come up in the conversations since I started the Choralist conversations. But at some point, it seemed like those that were suggesting these things were crazy in a way. And now to talk to a conductor from a choir that actually does these things, it reminds me of a conversation that I had with the late composer Uba Pelelani Mnomia in Cape Town, here in Cape Town. That was in 2018, during one of the festivals that had commissioned both of us to write music for a massed choir. So it was after the performance, and we were just talking about challenges that we feel can actually be addressed and would grow. And he speaks about, Mr. Zwane, it looks like I am losing you. Let's see. Mr. Zwane, can you hear me? It looks like I am losing Mr. Zwane. Let me continue with the point as I am waiting for him, because I was not actually relating this point to him per se. I was just saying, Mr. Mnomia says, people of choral music have what he says is inward love. We only love what is around our circle. We love ourselves as the choristers, as the choirs, as we are not really concerned about those who have no interest and who have no understanding of choral music. We feel that they don't belong in the space of choral music. Whereas we should be inviting those people in as listeners and followers, because they're the ones that are going to pay for what we're doing. They are the ones that are going to even attract businesses, because we are going to have this big audience that can attract the corporate world to come and invest in choral music. So to sit with a conductor that says we host car washes where there's no choral music being sung, just cars being washed, there's a shisanyama, we cater for these people, and then we tell them who we are, what we do. Definitely tomorrow they will be interested in joining our performances and contributing to the choir, because we happen to be part of the life that is happening in our community. As we wait for Mr. Zwane to come back, let me read some of your comments. HMCS Choir, my choir, I miss you guys. Kani, where are we opening? Belisizwe, we thank God for kusilethela wena imisebenzi yakho yancomeka ubambisene nayo ikwaya lenkulu. Mr. Zwane, thank you. You are back.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. It was the network.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I read that one correctly, but that is one of your choristers asked, when are you guys opening? Tell me, are you also on lockdown as we are in South Africa?
Yes, yes, we are in lockdown. I think right now, probably, I think you are in stage two.
Yes.
We are in lockdown. Basically, let me say that. But we do have businesses operating now. We do have some events starting to happen. So I think it's only a matter of time now to answer Tanyana there. I think soon we will be opening soon. I know they miss it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a while. It's really been a
Yeah.
while. And also Unsikom Zibembe there says your commitment and contribution to the choral music in Eswatini is commendable, Mangete. Ndikothulela umnqwazi mhlekazi ungadinwa.
Okay.
I'm not
Yeah,
sure about this one. I'm not sure about this one. Can you explain this? This is your brother Tando. Explain this.
No, he knows that I use Eswatini mobile for data and probably is making
Ah,
fun.
hey, order when Tando, order. This is your big brother. You don't say those things. You don't say those things.
Yeah.
So before you were cut by e-network, your Swatini
Yes.
mobile there. I was just commending what you guys are doing in terms
Yeah.
of getting people who are not necessarily in choral music to be
Yeah.
interested in choral music, because those are the people that support us eventually. These are the people. This is the community where we exist.
Yeah.
They need to be part of our lives. They need to be
Yeah.
a support
True.
system. So thank you for doing that, and I hope more people are going to learn from what you guys are doing. As we move on, there, Mr. Sanele Sidney Simelane. Lovely, Mr. Shangase. I'm learning from your talent. You are a leader. Ucho Mr. Simelane says, go on, leader. That
Yeah.
comment by Ngosomzi, you are not only contributing Eswatini Pela, you are also contributing in South Africa, because unfortunately, I don't remember competing with you. Or did we compete in 2013? I really don't remember.
We
Well,
we no, we did in 2014. I thought I had done justice to that Gloria, and you came in and whooped us out of NCF
yeah,
2014.
in Durban. Oh, yeah. But I was going to say, even if I had never competed against you at the National Choir Festival, I
Yeah,
know,
in Durban.
for sure,
Yeah.
yeah, those ones that compete with you guys, they don't sleep if HM Correctional Services Choir is going
Yeah.
to be part of that competition. That Mimanka is telling. Like in 2017, I thought, wow, these choirs.
Yeah.
It was Glow Choir, it was Kopano Chorus, it was Wedicha, it was Free State Choristers, there was Northwest University
Yeah.
Serenaders. Those were some of the choirs that I thought, okay, any one of these can
Yes.
just win.
Yes.
I don't care, because you guys were really killing each other. So your contribution is bringing vibrancy
Yeah.
even in South
Yeah.
Africa. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for doing that. And now
Yeah. Thank you
Mangete,
so much.
one of your choristers was just asking Tanyana Lamini, when are you guys opening? I'm always interested to hear how the conductor and the management are keeping in contact with their choristers. Of course, you're not conducting very young people. It's people who work and some who are students at university, but still there has to be some form of
Mm.
contact that we make during this time. So how are you keeping contact with your choristers, and how are they? How do you find out how they're doing?
Thank you for that question. I think we live in a different time, in a very very positive time because there are technological advancements that have been done over the past few years. So we do have WhatsApp groups where the management is always in touch with the choir. We do interact on Facebook. We do call each other. We do see each other. We're lucky because Swaziland is very, very small. Like, it's very, very small. It's a small country. So we're bound to bump into each other now and then. So, but the one thing I can tell is that they really miss being in the choir because each and every time we meet up or speak on Facebook, there is always that question, when are we opening? So the unfortunate part is that I do not have the answer for that one. It is totally out of our hands. The only thing that we can do as a choir technical team and the management is make sure that whilst everything is actually shut down, we have plans moving forward. Because the one thing we need to understand is that COVID-19 has potentially changed everything. So we need to adapt to a new way of doing things. Luckily, from the time I joined the choir in 2014, I tried, because our schedule has always been packed. So you try and teach choristers to make sure that they always learn music on their own, learn ahead, because I remember in 2014, 2016, you would find that we have only 6 to 8 weeks between competitions. So we were struggling to actually be ready, be prepared. So what we did, how do we speak to choristers to encourage them to learn music on their own and learn ahead? So right now we are discussing behind the scenes about how will we adapt to doing things on live like we are now. How are we going to have live concerts on Facebook, on YouTube? How do we do that? So I think it's a discussion that is ongoing. But as you said, akusibo bantu labancane lesibahlabelisayo. It's not just the youth. So you have seniors, you have people who are leading the department. So you need to convince all of these people and bring them all together to adapt to a new way of doing things. It's not going to be easy, but we are committed to making sure that we get it right in the end.
Great. There's a question there from Maestro Mzwandile Matthews. What happened to the choir from the correctional facility that participated in the SASK a few years ago? What happened to that choir?
Okay, let me answer him in this way. We have the Eswatini Bank Schools Choral Music competition, sorry. That is where the choir is affiliated. So I also happen to conduct another choir within that competition, the region choir. So there is this choir from Correctional Services. They're called Vula Masango Choir. One of the best choirs we have in the country. I'm telling you, it is always one choir that generates so much interest in competitions. So luckily for them, they have been able to grow and they're in the Champ of Champs category. They beat me last 2018. Yeah, they just beat me, came into that competition. It was as if I am not even there with our choir. So last year they were position number 2. So it's a very, very good choir. I have total respect for them. So, and I do know that they do rehabilitate these young children, as Bob Matthews is posing the question. We have choristers who have been rehabilitated there, finished their rehabilitation, and after finishing school, they came in and went to Correctional Services choir, the choir itself. So we do have those choristers. There's a beautiful working relationship that we have.
Beautiful, beautiful. I know one of the people who are very much interested in choral music as part of the rehabilitation process for inmates is Professor Twani. She spoke about that last week briefly. That's part of the PhD and some of the contributions she made on books. So that is a very important question there, ebuzwa by Maestro Mzwandile Matthews. Before you addressed those two questions, you were talking about the lessons from this period of COVID-19, which I'm interested in. What lessons have you learned? Maybe now as a choir leader, as a choral conductor, what lessons have you learned, and what are you going to do differently or planning to do differently going forward as part of the learnings from this period?
Yeah. I've been speaking to colleagues in the past few weeks. One of them, the one I speak to like almost daily, is Mlungisi from Manzini Choir. And when Bab Sambo passed away, we were approached locally with him, Manzini Choir and Correctional Services, to provide, hymns for an online memorial service that was going to be done this side. The unfortunate part was that is when we set up and realized that we have not done as much as we should have. We didn't have those hymns recorded. I only had one. I think he had one or two. So that is when we started this discussion with Mlungisi to say, aren't we doing a great disservice to ourselves, to our choirs, by putting so much focus and attention to the competition side and neglecting that music should be a universal language. There should be music for all occasions. And that is when we discussed the idea to say, wait, let's go back to our choirs and try and discuss with them, how do we record our music? How do we put our choirs out there? How do we have more material? So I think in that regard, we haven't done as much as we should have. So this period, COVID-19, the second lesson that it taught me is the importance of having relations with each other as conductors, as choirs, as choristers. Because in the end, one thing I have realized, when COVID-19 came, it just obliterated all competition. Now, what are we then left with? We're left with one another. In all honesty, we're left with one another, and we should be able to be mapping a way forward together, not working in silos. Mel Caesar working alone over there, and this one working alone over there. When government comes and says, we want your view, what are you working on as a choral fraternity for us to allow you to operate? If they find us not being able to speak to one another and to work with one another, then we are doomed. So that is another lesson that I learned. We need to be able to build the relations outside of these spaces that cause so much tension. Competition is beautiful. I love competition, and other conductors love competition. But the sad part is that we are not able to transfer a message that says to choristers, the competition will happen over 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and after we are done, we need to continue living together. So I think that's another part that I found that we are lacking in, and we need to strengthen on that culture of being able to live together, to speak together, and to work together, not in silos.
That's beautifully put, Mr. Zwane. Umnguni there, ukhala nge-network. Nxe mnguni. Ndimince because this thing, load shedding, it just happens. It can just shut down everything now. So I am just happy we are 7 minutes away from finishing without a power outage. So Mangete, we are now concluding our chat this evening. Tell me, future plans of the choir. You had plans for 2020. You were then disturbed by COVID-19, and you had some lessons. So, and you just confirmed right now that things are not going to be the same going forward. So I am expecting that the plans that you had for 2020 won't be the same going forward to 2021 and beyond. So you may have not sat with your choir management and executive, but just as a conductor, what are your thoughts in terms of future plans going forward for HM Correctional Services, just to assure the people who love and follow this choir that this choir is going to live and be active beyond COVID-19?
Mm. No, thank you very much. Like I was saying to you, I think there was that harsh realization that we hadn't done enough when it came to, performing and recording music. So, luckily enough, we do have conductors within the choir who are actually conductors, school conductors, choir conductors. We do have others who are conducting, church choirs and everything. So one thing I've been speaking about was saying, can we now move towards finding a balance? There is competition, but let's also do works. Let's also do complete works. Let us try and actually transform this choir from as this competitive unit, competition, but to be a choir that is able to be an all-round to do
Mangete.
more.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we need to try and do some complete works, continue doing these gala dinners that we have been doing. And I also think that we could do more in as far as commercializing our art form. I think that is one part that we need to tap into moving forward because, for instance, the one honest truth is that when you go for a competition, large category choir, when we went for NCF finals in 2017, going to South Africa, we spent somewhere around 80,000. How much money do you make back out of that? You know, so you have to spend 80,000. Let's say, for instance, you are going to be making uh, 40,000 back. You've already committed, over-committed into this project. But if you are able to find balance and say, oh, we're able to have this gala dinner and we are able to generate profits, more profits, then it does find a balance in what we are doing than just the losses. So I think commercializing our art form is something that should be very high on our agenda, more so in our country, in Swaziland. I think that is where we need to be going towards. The lucky part of COVID is that it has shown us that we can exist even on online. We can exist on social platforms. We can exist everywhere, almost everywhere. We can have people streaming our music. We can have money being made out of all of these things. So I think if you are someone who sees the positive in such situations, you are going to find that there is something that we could do out of this period that could inspire, a change moving forward for our choirs and our fraternity.
Rest assured, this thing of commercializing our choirs is not only for Eswatini, it's for everywhere. Even in South Africa, we need to work towards that. I remember one of my guests in the month of August, Umama Umande Sanguza, mentioned the issue of us as choralists learning the value chain involved in what we are doing. And last week, Professor Twani also elaborated on that by saying we need to learn to leverage on what we have in terms of making business. Because tell you what, there are songs that we can love or tolerate when they are prescribed for a competition. We can sit there and listen to this song, but I don't want to listen to that same song when I'm driving from Cape Town to Butterworth. I don't want to be listening to that. I want to listen to folk music, very light music, nice and understandable, more especially if I'm not a person that is into choral music and opera. But I do want some nice rhythms because that is lovable. So that's one of the things I feel we need to, as we go towards commercializing our music, we need to know what the client wants. And that is why Umama was speaking about understanding the value chain. What value are you getting and what value are you giving? So that the win-win situation, it's not one-sided. So thank you very much, Mangete, for allowing us this time to have with you. I hope those that were watching at home were empowered, as I am, by you visiting the Choralist Choir Hour. Before we close, let me give you a minute to say your goodbyes.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on your program, Mr. Njeza. I think I need to say this. We are very, very much honored. More so when you look at yourself as a person, as a young person from the Kingdom of Eswatini, you never think that such opportunities could actually be availed to you, and actually see that people do have an interest in what you are doing. So I do feel honored. I need to say thank you for our choir. Thank you too for our fraternity, our local fraternity, as Swaziland itself. We very much appreciate it. And I do hope that from the little that we were able to share today, one can be inspired. We also hope that we would get feedback from others to say, oh, on this, what you say, this and that, probably you could do it in this way. We are always open to learning. Learning, you can never have enough. So thank you so much for having me on your show. And I wish you growth and the show to continue and inspire even more people. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mangete. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, I think the National Choir Festival, Old Mutual National Festival page on Facebook will be streaming live the funeral of the late composer, Mr. Pelelani Mnomia Ukininda. May his soul rest in peace. Thank you, Old Mutual, for your contribution in programs like this one. And we know that Old Mutual is the biggest supporter of choral music in South Africa, because they support the biggest choir festival, which is the National Choir Festival. I am hoping that we will make sure as choralists that we attract more corporates than just one company as Old Mutual. Even South African Post Office that used to support SACMA, we want those to come back. We want Telkom once sponsored the National Choir Festival alongside Old Mutual. We want Metropolitan, because I know when I grew up in the Eastern Cape, Metropolitan was sponsoring Tracker in the Transkei, in the old Transkei. So, and once they sponsored WECMA in the Western Cape. So we know Standard Bank contributes in Eswatini in the choir. So we need more and more sponsors. And that maybe is not something that I can achieve as a conductor, but there's someone who is good with that within the choral fraternity, because I studied music. Someone else must have studied business and they know how to do these things. This is why it's important for us as choralists to come together. Thank you so much for joining this evening. As I move out, I will be playing one more song from HM Correctional Services. Good night.